Hey, tonight I thought it'd be good to just talk about a couple of other things kind of surrounding this issue. And I want to kind of delve into this a little bit in a different way. What I'm going to talk about here is why things are a little different in approach than what we would might expect. As natural health practitioners, we focus our efforts on trying to get a person optimally healthy. And so it's really a different tact than treating sick people per se. But I'm just immensely frustrated with CDC right now for a couple of reasons. And one of them being that we know we can fill rooms with data and studies that talk about deficiencies of certain things and the effect on the immune system. So I went on Google Scholar and I just typed in vitamin D and the immune system. And in 0.05 seconds, Google Scholar pulled up 1.6 million results. Vitamin A, 1.64 million results. Zinc, 1,050,000 results. Vitamin C, 1,540,000 results. So we know there's plenty of data, there's plenty of research that would corroborate that you should have optimal levels of these things. Not that it's a treatment for the illness, because it's really not a treatment for the illness. It is to fortify your defenses and make sure you don't have a deficiency state so that you become more susceptible. So you take your thinking and you have to change it. So we know that if you are deficient in, for example, vitamin D, your outcomes are far worse. Hey man, how's it going? So your outcomes are far worse. Same thing with vitamin A. Same thing with low vitamin C levels. So we know, man, if we are going to be sick, we would like the sickness to be as mild as possible, and we're still going to build up our immunity. So one of the other things I looked at was the epidemiological data from the different places and who got sick. So it started in China, and in China they had a lot of mortality in especially men over the age of 65. And one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is 70% of men over the age of 65 in China smoke, where only 2% of women smoke. So we know smoking is a massive comorbidity. We definitely, in fact, a comorbidity that we have to consider. It's going to make you more susceptible to illness. As we go across to Italy, we know it's an older population. It's the second oldest population in the world, second to only Japan. And one of the things about Italian families is there's no nursing homes. The elderly live with their families. So they're getting a lot more contact with people who might be quote unquote pre-symptomatic carriers or asymptomatic carriers. For example, children. So children basically have no symptoms from this illness, or very, very mild symptoms, which is great because they're building up immunity. They're creating antibodies. It's bad in a sense if you get in contact with an elderly person because you may show no illness, yet the older person is much more susceptible and more likely to be adversely affected. So we know that. So we know that is things. And then as it comes across the pond, so to speak, into the United States, one of the comorbidities that's getting really, really high is diabetes and obesity. And unfortunately, this is an epidemic in the United States. There's a guy, PhD, his name's Michael Osterholm, and I was just listening to his interview with Peter Attia, who's, really smart guy, brilliant guys. And there's talking about why people are susceptible and why they are not susceptible, and they don't actually know the answers. There's theory. But it harkens back to taking care of your health rather than treating sickness. The most optimally healthy people, even if they get this sickness, it will be a mild sickness that they can recover from. Whereas the person with comorbidities, the person who has type 2 diabetes or has hypertension, is on a medication for hypertension, they may be much more adversely affected by the virus than somebody else. So we have to look at not just where the virus is, because it's basically going to be everywhere. It's who is affected and what is their state of health at that time. So if you're sleep deprived, which we talked about in the first immune system episode, the first thing I talked about, do not be sleep deprived right now. It is just too hazardous for your health and the health of your family. Get your sleep. The other thing is we don't want to run deficiencies of some nutrients that we know have an effect on your immune system. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, essential fatty acids. These are like the core ones. We know that we can knock out stuff with iodine. We talked about this as well. I talked about how to make a nasal mist. I have a video on YouTube. You can look that up. Simple to make, inexpensive, effective. The other things are you need to think of your body as a fortress, and you're going to build up the fortress as much as you possibly can to eliminate the possibility that something's going to break through the walls and set up shop. So there's germs everywhere all the time. So we know that certain things are comorbidities, and some of them it's the horses out of the barn. So like if you have type 1 diabetes, that's a comorbidity. So there's nothing really. That's a good question. The answer is I don't know, and the answer is nobody seems to know why diabetics are more susceptible. However, in type 2 diabetes, more times than not, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with a type 2 diabetic who also is obese. So there are some theories about why that is the case. One of the things that's in common there is that there's more inflammation. So there's these things called interleukins that tend to be higher among that demographic, which means you have more inflammation, and that could cause you to have more cytokine reaction. You could have less reserves in your immune system, so that when you get compromised, your immune system actually overreacts. So a good analogy I heard was, let's say you have a 4-cylinder car and only 2 cylinders are firing. So those 2 cylinders have to fire harder and harder and harder to make up for the loss that the other 2 cylinders would have provided. And in fact, they overproduce and they cause these things called a cytokine storm, which makes people sick. So you're sick from the pathogen, but you're also sick from what your immune system is doing to deal with the pathogen. So it is kind of like mitigating circumstances to have optimal health. You're kind of like saying, okay, we're going to get this thing. This thing is coming. Like, so if we talk about epidemiology, and the unfortunate thing is if you like to read any epidemiology, it's not exciting, but I have read more than my share in this last couple of weeks. And nearly every epidemiologist says, here's the deal. The gold ring of epidemiology is when you have 70 to 80% of the population has been exposed to the virus. Now, this sounds terrible, but it is what has happened and what has always happened over the last many thousands of years that populations have come together, is that more and more people coming together get contacted with the virus and they build immunity. And eventually what happens is there is not any more hosts for the virus to infect, and it burns out. So if 80% of the population gets in contact with the virus, which will happen eventually before the vaccine happens, then there will be no fertile ground for the virus to basically set up shop, and it'll begin to diffuse. This sounds terrible because people go, well, I don't want this. I don't want my kids to get this. I don't want whoever to get this. But at a certain point, it's nearly inevitable. So flattening the curve, when they say flatten the curve, that doesn't mean less people get it. That means you're taking the time that would be a natural bell-shaped distribution, and you're just smashing it down. The time under the bar, under the graph, is still the people under the graph are still the same. So still a lot of people are going to wind up getting this. So that's why I'm in here. I'm doing these talks because I want you to be as optimally healthy as you possibly can in the event that this comes your way. And I would say it is nearly inevitable that you or somebody you know is going to get in contact with this. So be as healthy as you can and start by implementing the simple things that we talk about, because this is going to fortify you in the event, and during the inevitability that this comes your way, you're going to be able to have a healthy immune response, which means you're going to make antibodies and you're going to be immune in the future. So this is also something that came from Peter Attia and Michael Osterholm's video, was our audio, was a podcast actually, was that he said that the mammal model, this macaque monkeys they exposed to the coronavirus, they were able to create lasting immunity. And they tested them, they exposed them, they tested them, they measured their immunoglobulin levels, and after a certain amount of time after, they re-exposed them again. They were immune, so they didn't get it again. And they were not actually excreting any more virus, so they did what's called PCR testing, which looks for antigens. And then they also did swabs where they looked at their nasopharynx, they swabbed them, their throats and everything, and they weren't putting out any more virus. So one of the things that we know, based on the mammal model, based by experts, is that there is a chance to create lasting immunity. But you don't create immunity if you don't have exposure. So that's the thing that we need to consider, is that eventually the exposure is going to happen, and any vaccine that comes is going to be at least a year down the road, maybe more, even if they rush it, because you have to make sure vaccines are safe. So if it's neither safe nor effective, then that vaccine isn't going to provide value to the community at large. So just some stuff to think about in order to build your body up, so that when this comes and pays a visit, that you're going to be optimally healthy. And we also know one of the things that is important is that children generally have very, very mild symptomatology or no symptomatology, but they could still be actively infected. So people think, well, if you're sick, then you're going to have some symptoms. Well, they've kind of revised this model of asymptomatic spreaders of the virus to pre-symptomatic. So they went back and looked at some of the data that were there from China, and they realized, wait a minute, they weren't asymptomatic, they were pre-symptomatic, and later developed some symptoms that indicated that they were in fact sick. So still go through all the protections and things that you've been told. Wash your hands, don't touch your face. Those are biggies. So, if you frequently wash and do all that, that's going to help. That's going to lower your chances. But I really think the best advice that they could be giving now is more about just getting your body optimally healthy, fortifying your body as much as possible with these inexpensive things that you could get readily. It's funny is these things that aren't hard to get a hold of, and when you implement them, you're just improving your odds of having a less severe outcome from having the virus. So epidemiology is saying that eventually people are going to have to get in contact with it in order to build herd immunity. That it's not a popular thing to say, but unfortunately, that's what all of the epidemiologists that I have read continue to say, and they say over and over again. So it's either one of two things. 80% of the population need to get in contact with it, well, 70 to 80%, or they have a vaccine, or the combination of the two. So this is how we get through it, though. The only way out is through. So that's there's nothing else. You can't hide away forever. It's going to be around. It's going to be in the environment as long as there's enough people to infect. Once we hit that threshold, this will go away. I mean, if it comes, there'll be enough people with, significant immunity that it won't be a big deal. But it is dangerous. It's a dangerous virus, and it does have some consequences for people who have comorbidities. So it's not to take it lightly. It's not to say it's nothing. It's not nothing. It's significant. So that's why I'm saying, do your due diligence. Don't believe what I'm saying. Go to Google Scholar and type in these things. You just go on Google Scholar, type in vitamin D in the immune system. You can start reading, and sometime in 10 years from now, you'll be done reading all of that. That's how much data there is. We can fill rooms with the amount of data that is on there about these things. So these things that I talk about and the things that I recommend, they're not my opinion. That's well beyond my opinion. This is as close to scientific fact as there is. And people worry about them, like, oh, my doctor worries I'm going to take too much vitamin D. Let me tell you, as a comparison, each year, about 15,000 people or so die from taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. This is your ibuprofens, naproxen, aspirin, so on and so forth. Okay, there's a fair amount of death that people would take and not think a second thought about that. That is an order of magnitude of 100 times how many people get either ill or die from taking nutritional supplements. Even fat-soluble ones like vitamin A, like vitamin D, like taking supplemental zinc, like taking vitamin C. So your ibuprofen is infinitely more toxic than vitamin D and vitamin A. So this is why we say, don't freak out about this. Just get some and get your levels up. And if you have a practitioner that you work with that'll run blood tests with you, like I do these blood tests all the time. I've never seen vitamin D toxicity. 25 years of running these tests, and I've never seen vitamin D toxicity. So, and unless you're just hell bent on poisoning yourself, you're really going to be okay. So get these things, and I'll put it up here again. These are the companies I like. This is Biotech Pharmacal. This is vitamin A. This is 25,000 units. There's 100 capsules. I may take 1 or 2 of these a week in the wintertime, and it costs like $25. So this is like 2 years. Same deal here, same company. Vitamin D, this is 50,000 units. Sounds like a lot. 50,000 units is in milligrams, actually not even a milligram, it's in a microgram level. That's something like 2,000 micrograms is 50,000 units or something. I can't remember exactly. But these are low doses. And I like Zinc Plus from Claire. The reason I like this one is because it has vitamin C, it has copper, it has some of the other things in it. Inexpensive, cheap, effective. CDC, when they talk to people, they should put out an advisement. Here's what you should do. Here's what I recommend to do. But we get zero nutritional data from the CDC. And it is their job to provide information that would be vital to people's health. This is vital to your health. It is inexpensive. You give this to your kids. You give this to your grandmom. It's not a big deal. And you just use it as insurance. That's what I call it. This is insurance. Insurance isn't a check you send to a company. Insurance is stuff that you do for yourself that improves your health. Because ultimately, you are responsible for your health. And, when my kids were little, I was responsible for their health. So the things that they did, the habits that they developed, they were the result of things that I did, said, and showed them. So, I was, the nutrition police in my house. Nope, none of this. Yes, this goes away. This does that. You sleep good. You exercise. You do these things. And you try to model that so that they develop good habits and behaviors. So the long and short of it is, what's the RDA? I'm not exactly sure what the RDA is. You can overdose on vitamin A if you take 40,000 units a day for months and months on end. And it's really not that that deadly and that dangerous. It's the lethal dose, I forget, it's more than this whole bottle. If for an adult my size, I'm like 215 pounds. For me, I don't know. I don't remember what the daily allowance is. But if I took this whole bottle, this might be enough to make me sick. So, but obviously you don't do that. So, but what I recommend people do is take 25,000 to or so units per week. And so when I give dosages for fat-soluble nutrients like this, I generally take them once a week. Vitamin D, which for people who don't know, and I talked about this in the first one, but vitamin D isn't really a vitamin. It's actually a hormone called cholecalciferol. And your body makes this when you get in the sun from cholesterol. It's the UV light causes a change in the ring of what's called 7-deoxycholesterol, and then it creates a synthesis all the way down, and it involves your liver, your kidneys, and one of the properties of vitamin D is that it creates these peptides all through your body called cathelicidins. And cathelicidins are really potent against microbes. So they kill viruses, they kill bacteria, they do all of this stuff for us. But if you're low in it, you're going to get beat up by stuff in your world. So, and none of this is to say that you're never going to get sick, because it's ridiculous. Of course you're going to get sick. You're going to get colds, you're going to get flus, you're going to get things here and there. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I like to eat chocolate. I like junk food. I'm a night owl. I like to stay up too late and do dumb stuff all the time. So I'm not perfect in my discipline either. But what I'm encouraging people to do while this is an issue is really hone down and do better. So eat better food, whole foods, single ingredient foods. Broccoli is broccoli. If your food that you're eating has 57 ingredients and half of them you can't pronounce, that's probably not something you should be eating. And for damn sure, it shouldn't be something you're giving your children. So eat whole foods, eat a whole food based diet, get plenty of sleep, get plenty of water, get in the sun. The sun has so many healing properties. It is so good for us, but you have to do it in moderation. So you can't get burned and expect that that's going to be healthy. But an average good exposure of 15, 20 minutes per day is excellent for you. A lot of hospitals, especially in the old days, and even mental hospitals back in the old days, had solariums. And, there's a soothing effect to being in the sun. People get on the beach because they like it. There's something about it that's enjoyable. And you know that at an innate level. You put your feet in the sand, you get some sun, you feel good. So there's something about that. So get some sunlight. And you can be outside. I don't know if they're telling people not to go outside. I don't really pay attention because, they're not in the business of keeping people healthy. They're in the business of treating disease. And they're kind of different things. So I'm in the business of trying to keep people healthy, get them as healthy as their potential allows, so that when the bad guy comes, the bad guy can't kick their butt. So that's what I do all day. So I'm on this end, and I don't tell them how to do their job, and they don't tell me how to do my job. We just each have a place, and I'm not an alternative medicine practitioner. I don't practice medicine. I practice what I do. So so they do what they do, and I do what I do. And a lot of times we completely agree. And at other times we completely disagree. So right now I find myself at loggerheads with some of the advice or lack of advice that's been given. And I feel like it is my responsibility to talk about what I know to help people get optimally healthy and build up a natural fortress against the pathogens and things that are in our environment. This virus will eventually go away, no doubt. It's going to go away. It'll hit a peak probably here soon. It'll start to disappear. It may pop up in different places across the country because it's not homogeneously distributed. It went to the hot spots where most of the Chinese nationals came in, and it created an area of sickness, and then it will begin to disperse, and eventually it'll get through everything. But it's going in hot spots right now because that's where the people went, and eventually it's just going to flatten out. And so we just have to be prepared for it when it comes our way. Like, I live outside of Pittsburgh, and there are cases here, but it's not anything like a New York would be. So it's not a terrible menace right now, but it's coming. I mean, it's going to come. There's going to be more and more cases, and certain places, in the South. New Orleans is badly affected, but they have a really, really high obesity rate, and they have a really high type 2 diabetes rate. So, and these things are preventable. So if you're a smoker and you're listening to this, now is the time to not be a smoker. I mean, it really, because it hits people in the lungs, and people's lungs, are very adversely affected. So now is the time to give up cigarettes. Now is the time to eat better, make better health decisions, get the nutrients we talked about, and just try to prepare your body for this, but also for the rest of your life. So it is almost, in a way, an opportunity to focus on getting our health in a priority state. Because a lot of people don't ever think about their health until it is affecting them. So you don't think about how your body is working and how everything is going until you have a problem. And that is not a proactive way of running your body. So you should be doing things for health, not to just avoid sickness, but to build health, so that you have resources, you have a repository that you can handle any virus or bacteria or anything that comes your way, even if you get sick, but you're going to bounce back better. So that's it. I try to handle all the questions that you ask me in this actual post, because if you have a question, more times than not, other people have the same question, and I try to make sure that the information is widely disseminated so that everybody has an opportunity to do something. And people keep sending me articles and everything, and I've been reading these things nonstop. Like, I read and I try to get through everything you send me, including yes, it is pretty cloudy in Pittsburgh, and it is hard to get sun. But it was really sunny this weekend, so I was out there quite a bit. But I try to read all the stuff that everybody sends me. I look at it, and if I have time, I try to get through it. Some of these things that the epidemiology stuff is like, it is hard to get through. But I do plow through it, and I try to get that data and give it back to you. Just at my level of understanding, and I'm not an epidemiologist and I'm not an immunologist, I just aggregate data and spit it back out, and that's like one of my few superpowers. So that's it. So make good health decisions and do the things that are going to ensure that you can be optimally healthy. So when this comes your way, you're going to be much more prepared. You're going to be in a much better place, and you're going to land on your feet rather than on your back. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Take care. Good night.